In shipping, the pump comes with oil, but you do need to remove the vent tape that comes on the vent cap itself. You're going to want to take that off prior to startup. You want to double check your unloader. Make sure that that's turned clockwise all the way and backed off a quarter of a turn. The pressure has already been preset at the factory. This is your unloader, and we prefer you leave it in that position at all times. This is where you hook your garden hose up to. You do have a cleanable filter behind that. You do need to check that. Make sure it doesn't get clogged. You have an oil dipstick where the engine does not come with oil. You'll need to check that daily. When you go to use this, you're going to want to pull this dipstick out and actually check the oil and make sure you have the proper level on the dipstick prior to startup. This unit does not come with a battery. You're going to need to add that 12-volt battery. It's a Group 75. The burner will not work without the battery. We have a brake that's located here. When this thing is being run, you're going to want to pull that brake both sides so that the unit doesn't roll away or somebody bump into it and it rolls away on you. Prior to startup, I've already uncoiled my 50-foot hose. You'll need to inspect this daily before usage to make sure that there's no wire sticking out of it or rub-throughs. Make sure you don't rub your hand across that when you check that. It'll actually stick wires in your hand. This comes with a quick coupler, which has an O-ring inside. You want to inspect that, make sure the O-ring is installed in there. Otherwise the water will leak from there, which you need to replace that O-ring. This is the other end of the hose, of course, goes to the gun, and you want to make sure that all this is clean and it's not cracked. Sometimes they'll crack up here if they get wore out, and you'll need to replace that. This will usually connect here on your hot water unit to the coupler. You'll hear it click and you know you have a good click fit. Your hose to your pump should be hooked up for clear water. At this time, you want to turn your water on and make sure that you have water running out of this end of the hose without any air. Once you've purged your unit, and that's what they mean when there's water coming out of this end, then you're ready to hook your gun up. At this time, you should shut the water off, and then you can turn around and couple your hose to your gun. At the same point, this one has an O-ring, just like the end of your hose, same coupler. You want to make sure that that O-ring is installed so it does not cause any damage down the road. This gun has a trigger here. If you want a guard that stops it so that nobody can pull the trigger. When your unit's running, you're going to want to make sure you pull this trigger and not let that pump run for more than 3 minutes. That's the only way it cools. You have a quick connection here, which also has O-rings in it. You want to make sure that this is not loose, that is tightened up all the way. That way you don't have any water running here. When the hot water is running, from this section to this section will burn. For if you have it set at 100 degrees, this is going to be 100 degrees. You have a quick couple here, which also has an O-ring in it. You're going to want to make sure that that is in place. When you put a nozzle into this unit, you want to make sure when you pull this back that it is inserted. That is not correct. When you pull the trigger, this will become a projectile and hurt somebody, so do not aim it at anybody. You want to put that in there. You may have to turn this lightly, and that'll connect it together. Once that's all the way up, you can pull on that. You know it will not come out. As long as I didn't pull the trigger, I have no pressure there. You pull this trigger, it now is live, at which point you don't aim it at anybody or yourself. It will hurt. Again, to start the unit, I want to make sure our gas is on, which pushes the lever all the way over. It slides back and forth. This will be for the off position when you're transporting. This is on when you're going to run it. It's a cold start, so I need my choke on all the way. Key switch is over here. Put my earplugs in. And we're going to head start it. Choke down a little bit. Get it fairly warm. Then we'll choke off. You want to make sure your unit's running. You're going to want to pull this trigger about every three minutes. You don't want to leave the unit sitting idle. So if I stop, the unit sits and idles. At least every 3 minutes you want to go and let it cool down. Otherwise there's no way for the pump to go. I'll run you through the hot water. On your heaters, there's a heat switch which turns on. This is going to turn on your fan. As soon as you turn that on, you can hear the fan running. That's where your heater on the heater control. We also have a thermostat, which you can adjust your temperature, which will go as hot as you need to be for you get into your grease, your oils, your gas, any of the type of cleanups you need. A lot of them will have difference. For gum, it's usually, I found that it works nicer around that 100 degrees. And you'll see we have 2 LED lights on the panel. This one here is to show you when we have water flow. So now if I pull this trigger, you'll see I got water flow. My thermostat light is actually coming on at the same time, showing you that the burner's running. So we have heat and we have flow. If I let go of this trigger, both of those stop working. So your burner will automatically stop anytime you pull that trigger off. If you turn your thermostat down, I'm going to turn it back on. We have a thermostat, we have flow. If I turn my thermostat down, you'll see that the thermostat light went off, but my flow light is still on until I let go of the trigger. So these lights are very important to be able to let you know if your burner's working. When you go to cool down, you'll notice we have steam coming out of the end of this nozzle. I've shut my pressure washer off. I want to shut the hot water off. I want to shut my burner down to the thermostat down to off. You're going to want to run this until you see no more steam coming out of the end of your nozzle. The steam is telling you that's hot water. So when the steam quits, that means your water's cooled down. This can take anywhere between, depends on how hot you had it, sometimes up to 3 minutes. We're going to need to make sure, if one, that your gas is on. You put your stabilizer in your gas. We're going to start the unit and you want to run it for at least 5 minutes to make sure that you have stabilizer has gotten to the carburetor. At which point now we can shut it off. You're going to want to shut this carburetor off, make sure it's off completely. Get your switches off, your heaters off, your thermostats off. You'll need to take and disconnect your spark plug wire, which is right here in between the muffler and the air box, which you want to make sure that the engine's cooled down before doing so. By disconnecting the spark plug, the engine will not start. So that's usually the safest mode to have your engine anytime you're doing any major maintenance on it. If you're repairing the pump or anything else on it, you always want to pull the spark plug. That way nobody gets hurt. To disconnect your battery, usually it's safer to disconnect the ground first, then the positive. It's good to disconnect both sides. Then at this point we can hook up for our antifreeze. You'll need at least a 1 foot hose, a funnel, and you're going to couple that to your garden inlet. And you have your 1 foot hose in the funnel. You may need somebody to help you at this point. You're going to be dumping your antifreeze into that funnel that goes into the pump. I have my funnel here, I have my antifreeze. You're going to fill that up. If you either have some assistance or you'll need to do it yourself, you're going to need to come around and put your switch on. I do have the gas still off, and you're going to crank it. At which point, when you crank this, that's going to allow the pump to suck the antifreeze down and bring it through the system. You're going to need to use RV antifreeze. It shows on page 32 in your manual, explains a little bit better what I'm talking. But once you put this antifreeze in, you may need up to 2 gallons, maybe 3. You need to have antifreeze come out of the coil. So if you use RV, it's going to be a light pink. You should see that color come out of the other side of the coil. Once you have that color coming out of there, then you know you have enough antifreeze within the system to be able to last you for the winter. For non-use, you always want to roll your hose up, couple it together. That way it keeps spiders and different critters out of there. You can hang your hose up there. You'll also need to add antifreeze to your gun, at which point you can put it through this part by pulling the trigger, adding antifreeze, so that you put antifreeze in this area. This is the part that'll freeze up and break. So you need to put antifreeze in that. That'll lubricate that for the winter, and you're ready to go for winterizing.